There we go.
Boom.
Boom. Boom. All right. We're here again this morning with Chris and myself. This is a crazy time of year for many people.
Howdy, everybody.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, let's just say hi. But also here at just at church, we're doing all of our strategies and goals. We've been doing a lot of our performance stuff for last year, just kind of assessing how last year went and really trying to start off strong this year so that we don't lose focus of the most important things that we're doing. And so that's what some other people are working on right now. People are out right now and kind of just thinking about their plans and their strategies and writing up, what they're well, they've already got their strategies, but they're thinking about how they're going to implement those things.
Yep.
Trying to develop good habits and just good, strategies for keeping their mind on that stuff right now. So.
Right. I struggle with this a lot, mostly. I think mostly because I tend to highlight things in my life that need attention that maybe aren't quite up to par.
Right.
And so when it's time to reflect back on a year or a season of life, I'm not inclined to reflect on those things that we accomplished, that we did well, that all that stuff.
Right.
I'm inclined to go, oh, well,
I didn't.
This was left undone, or we're still working on this.
Yep.
And it may not be all bad things. It may just be things that are still kind of in a process.
Right.
Which, I mean, if you want to get real relativist about it, everything's always in a process.
Right.
But there are definite times when stuff gets accomplished, and then once it's accomplished, it's out of my mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, oh, okay, cool. And I move past it. And so someone says, well, what was good about last year? And I'm like, I don't know.
Right.
So I
can think about are the bad things.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the hard things is to look back and go, what? We said we were going to do X and Y, and we did it, and it was great.
Right.
So, yeah, I think that's one of my challenges. Sit down, calm my mind down.
Right.
And be grateful, I guess, yeah.
I think it's one thing that I forget really easily is relational things, and so it's like if you and I sit down in February, or if I'm with some students in February or whatever, we just have great conversation and we see some good gain from that and some realizations and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I don't remember that in December.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's one of the most important things to me, but it wasn't one of those written down, start another group, do this event, that kind of stuff. And so sometimes I forget those things when it comes around to like. But those are the things exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But man, I tell you, it's just a crazy time. It's good though. Like what I love now is that we get to sit and to kind of focus on what are those most important things, right? Mm-hmm. So as we talk about like we want to start 4 more small groups this year, but not for the sake of just starting small groups.
Right.
We want people to be in meaningful communities of Christians, right? So that they're challenged, so that they're supported, so that they can consider those people friends, right? So that they're provided for, so that they're providing for other people in their church community, so that our church community. I mean, one thing that I love is that passage about they'll know we're Christians by our love, but it's not our love towards outsiders.
Right.
It's our love towards the people in the church.
Right.
And they'll be like, holy cow, they take care of each other so well. They love each other so much. Yeah. They got to be Christian.
Right.
Right? They'll know we're Christians by our love towards it. And just...
That's a good one. That's good because I think back on that sometimes. Again, struggling to think back on things, but I think back on that and like, okay, am I evidence of that?
Right.
Am I doing that?
Me too.
Or do I know people? Who are the people that I know who I could say are evidence of that? And invariably, when I think of those people I've known now or in the past or whatever, I'm definitely like, I would like to make a move towards that.
Right.
I'd like to make a move towards like being more like that family or those people.
Right.
So yeah, I mean that's a good reminder.
Yeah, I know Darcy and I, like this last summer, we went down and we budgeted our time and our finances, and we kind of went through who do we hang out with, and it was a little bit of an annoying budget, right? To go down because you're ultimately, I mean, you're not ranking people, but you are prioritizing time with people, and you're kind of saying there's a lot of important people in our lives, right? And you're saying these people get more and these people get less. Not ranking the people, but it's saying, our small group, we're going to try and make a huge priority because they're the people who God's put us around and kind of given us as an intentional Christian community. Right. So it's going to be our family, and then like right after our family, it's going to be our small group in our neighborhood, and then it's Phil. It's close friends. Phil's a very good friend of mine. Aaron. So you have some very good friends.
Yeah.
But these guys. Right now still mean more, right? We're still very close, but in terms of time that they get, it's going to be less because we want to spend time with those Christians, brothers and sisters who God has put right around us.
Yeah.
And that's a really hard thing to prioritize.
So, yeah, I mean, it's
crazy.
I'm challenged by just even this conversation because we had a season where our small group wasn't meeting. And it wasn't because of any real breakdown, I don't think. It was just because at some point it fell off the table. What happened is I started to become kind of, I don't know, ashamed is like a hard word for that.
Sure.
But like a little self-conscious about the lack of spending time and the lack of intentionality and the lack of leadership maybe that I was expressing there.
Right.
But as time went on, I was like, it's getting worse and worse and worse. And finally, I was able to reach out to everybody and say, okay, how can we re-engage?
Right.
This is important,
right.
And I do love you guys, right. And I want to do this well.
Right.
So, that's a good conversation that's happening now.
Yeah.
And of course, nobody, I don't think anyway, was mentally beating on me about it.
Right.
It wasn't as rough as I was making it out to be in my head.
Yeah.
But but you get in those funky moments where you're like, I don't know if I'm good for this,
I know.
So that's good. But it's good to look back and prioritize those things, because if you don't make priorities legitimately, like in that way, then you kind of walk through your life without that and lacking understanding maybe of what you're doing or why. Mm-hmm. That's hard for me to admit because I'm a freewheeling guy.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, whatever is good, but it's not.
I know, because we're similar. You and I are similar.
Yeah, true. Yeah, we just roll with it.
We just roll with it.
But sometimes we got to roll it.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Sometimes you got to stay disciplined to the things that you had come up with before, that you're not sitting there.
Yeah.
So the transition, and I just want to share with you guys, as you guys are in small groups, as you guys are leading small groups, that kind of stuff, you're going to, we came in here with the intention of talking about Romans 6, 1 through 11. And as we just sat and talked for 5 minutes, I don't know, I'm not looking at the clock right
10
now.
minutes, whatever.
So, a little more than that. Yeah, okay.
7. It was like almost 8. Yeah, there it is.
Not bad.
Cool.
We realized that there was something else that was valuable to talk about. That was maybe more on our hearts a little bit. And so just kind of jumping in and doing that. Don't be afraid to do that in your small groups. Come in up with your plan, but don't hesitate to go where you just kind of need to go. We didn't plan that at all. And as we usually start out, we ramble a little bit before we dig into the lesson. But
maybe this topic makes me nervous too.
Oh, I know. Yeah. This is deep, man. Like,
it is.
Even writing the questions for this today, I was just like this is heavy, and where you want to go with this, and for us talking about it on the microphone, I think could be a little more challenging too. It's like, what are those repeated deep sins? I know. So we might not go quite as deep, and we might kind of share that. But I would definitely encourage you guys to talk about meaningful things in your small groups. Really try not to talk about ideas of sins, but talk about more personal sins. Talk about more things that are real to you. It's really easy to talk about the ideas of what general people might be struggling with, and that's not bad when you're starting. That's not bad when you're testing out trust. But as you're growing together, being more personal is better. Mm-hmm. We may not always be able to lead that here, but it's definitely what we want.
Yeah.
So looking at Romans 6, 1 through 11, I think we're just going to, we'll jump around these questions as we normally do. You guys, I'll send the questions today around 4. But looking at that first question, do you ever feel like you take advantage of God's grace? So he starts out by saying kind of, don't sin more so that grace can increase.
Right.
Do you ever feel like you take advantage of God's grace, and how so?
Quite honestly, yes. And this is one of those things where I think I know it as soon as I've done it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm feeling challenged by this actually on like a daily basis, because I don't, in reality, I don't want to do that.
Right.
But I totally resonate with Paul saying, like, why do I do things I don't want to do, and why do I not do the things I know I should do? So there are definitely times when I'll walk something out, or I'll avoid something.
Right.
That I know, like Paul says later, everything's permissible, but not everything's profitable.
Right.
Right?
Right.
For us and our spirit, I mean. And I think that's an area where I will make justification.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know, and it actually came clear to me a little bit. I'll tell a little story. I don't mind telling this story. Some of these things are really, like, personal. I really got to wrestle with it with God.
Mm-hmm.
And if there were ever sins against another person, I need to involve that person, and I know that.
Yeah.
But if there's sins just towards what God has designed for me, I have to wrestle with Him about what I have to die to that. Man. Yesterday, though, this was so unexpected. But yesterday we had a bunch of seminary students around here, and I was meeting some of the guys. And it was a joy to meet these guys. These are the future of the church, you know, in terms of leadership. And they were getting a little tour, and I was in the sanctuary playing piano and trying to figure some stuff out.
Right.
And I had my cup of coffee in there.
Ooh.
Right. And these guys are having a tour.
Yeah.
And one of them's got his cup of coffee in there. And I know better.
Yeah. We're not allowed to have coffee in the sanctuary, by the way, guys, in case you don't know that. And we as a staff try pretty hard to follow that. But even we have our difficult times.
Well, for sure. And there are signs posted.
Right.
And it was Wednesday.
Right.
And we weren't having church and nobody was around.
Right.
But
odds of spilling were low.
But the character issue of it hit me.
Yeah.
Right? I'm like, okay, the signs are out here that say, hey, please don't have this in here. The reasoning has nothing to do with our people around or not.
Right.
The reasoning has to do, actually, this is where I went with it. The reasoning was, okay, someone I love has requested that sign go up and we not do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, do I love them enough, and do I trust God with that enough to obey that?
I know.
And I wasn't.
Right.
And I saw this guy, this other student in there. Now, I just had a coffee cup, and he had a cup with a lid on it.
Yeah.
You know, like a Tervis kind of thing.
Yeah.
And he's like, hey, at least mine has a lid. And I said, you know what, man? I want to be accountable with you right now. And we left the sanctuary.
Yeah.
And I said, here's the deal. We just agreed. Man, this is hard to even say.
I know. Even though it seems like a small thing, but the heart issue is bigger, right?
But it is. It's huge. So I said, you know what? You and I just agreed with rebellion, which that's hell. That's from hell. Mm-hmm. And we sinned twice because not only did we agree with rebellion and do what we wanted, then we justified it verbally to each other.
Right.
And I said, you know, that was wrong, and I don't want to agree with hell.
Right.
Sometimes we do that creed back and forth, you know.
Yeah.
Do you renounce the devil and all his works and all his ways? And we all say dutifully, you know,
I do renounce them.
Well, yeah, you do until you want your cup of coffee in the sanctuary.
I know.
Well, that's, like, do I want to, this is the hard part.
Yeah.
The hard part meaning not hard to execute, but the hard part to hear.
Right.
Do I want to sell my character for a cup of coffee?
Yeah.
And the answer always is no.
Right.
But my fruit showed differently.
Right.
So this student and I, who I just met, nice guy.
Yeah.
I said, look, we can't in obedience agree with hell.
Right.
So I repent. Mm-hmm. You're a witness and a partner in my crime right now. Mm-hmm. I repent. And I ask you forgiveness in Jesus' name. This all happened in like a 5-minute period.
That's so cool, man.
Well, it was awesome, but it was also like a learning moment for both of us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because now these other 3 seminary guys, not to be like weird or whatever. But these guys were standing and they just had their mouths open.
Yeah.
Like, what are we watching?
Right.
You know?
Right.
And I'm like, you know what? This
Like,
is
bro,
real.
it's just a cup of coffee.
Yeah, but this is
Right.
real.
Right.
So, I mean, that's a way. And I'm tempted every Sunday because I got to be in the sanctuary to do stuff, but I feel like I want my cup of coffee.
Right.
I'm tempted, right? You know what I mean?
know, man.
I'm
I
tempted
know.
every Sunday to do this thing, and so I don't want to do that. I don't want to abuse God's grace.
Right.
I don't want to take advantage of, His generousness towards me.
Right.
Anyway, I've gone on long enough, but the point is that hopefully was a good turning point. Like if I repented, which really means to change, then
Right. Turn away from you.
Then I've repented.
Right.
And I no longer want to sin in that way.
Right.
Right? I don't want to sin in any knowing way ever.
Yeah.
Right? I want to be like, oh man, I didn't know I did that.
I often use the phrase "I want to," right?
Mhm.
So I want to stop sinning,
Mm-hmm.
right? If I never wanted to sin, I wouldn't sin,
Mm-hmm.
right? My sins aren't all accidental. It's not like,
Right.
whoops, like that happened and I was just caught off guard, right? It's like, no, I'm aware.
Yeah.
I'm aware that what I'm about to do is wrong, and I
Yeah.
do it anyway because I want to do it, right? I
Yeah.
want to not do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or I want to follow God.
Yeah.
But right now I don't even want to all the time. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't.
I think that's the childish thing in us too.
Yeah.
And we're called to have faith like children, but we're called to walk away from those childish behaviors.
Right.
So it's a both and, right?
Right.
There's a benefit to being like wide eyed and everything's wonderful,
Right.
like in a literal sense,
Right.
wonderful. But to not behave like spoiled children,
Right.
And I don't want to go on about the Western church, but I think that's one of the things that challenges the people in the Western church.
Yeah.
Is that we're definitely spoiled. Like we don't
Yeah.
really want for much.
Right.
So, it's easy for us to just say, well, I want what I want.
Right.
Yeah, and that should never trump what God wants.
Yeah. So I think about how it's a challenge because we can't really take advantage of God, right? He is strong enough, right? He can't
Right.
be taken advantage of.
But that's why it's called grace.
It
right?
is. It is why
Yeah.
it's called grace, and He gives it to us, and we do misuse that, or we try to misuse that. But what I'm trying to get at, or what I'm thinking about, is so often when I think that I take advantage of God's grace, and I'm quotation marking with my fingers that you
Air
can't
quotes,
see.
yeah.
Hand quotes. Thank you. Though that take advantage, but when I do that, I'm more hesitant to get back into devotions, or I'm more hesitant to get back to prayer, right?
Right.
Because I've now mistreated God,
Right.
and I feel even more guilty, so I don't want to go and talk to Him about it.
Right.
When in reality, what He's telling me in this chapter is, hey, you've been set free from that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You've been set free from that sin. It doesn't hold you. It hasn't defeated you. You can come back to me because that grace was given to you. You couldn't take advantage of it. I've got nothing but more grace for you. Obviously, don't sin and just take advantage of it.
Right.
But when you do, that's why it was given.
Yeah,
because
see-
you're free from it. I'm not still mad.
Yeah.
Like, just come talk to me. And I love that idea that God just wants more time with us. That God just wants us to worship Him and wants to bless us, right? He wants to bless us with salvation. He wants to bless us with the truth, but all that kind of stuff. One quick question, because we've got to wrap. Unfortunately, you have a meeting in 10 minutes, and I have a meeting in 10 minutes, or
Yep.
11 minutes, so we've got 1 or 2 minutes left. Thinking about those things thinking about that old self, I think it's really tough to say, yeah, I'm willing to let myself and my desires die and just care about God's desires and live a life that's 100% devoted to Him. Now we know in practicality that's not going to happen, right? But even just saying, even kind of saying, yes, I'm willing, that's the goal, and that's what I want, is to let myself and my needs die and make Zach Teasdale's life all about Jesus Christ, right? What are the things for you, not necessarily the sins, but what are the things for you that make it really difficult to give up that old self?
So, man, that's a great question. So the sins, I don't think that too many of them are sins, like repeated thing, but they're attitudes maybe that that inform that. Okay, so here's what I know about myself, that there's probably more depth to this, but just to be as quick as I can.
Yeah.
I know that when I get bummed out, or when I feel defeated in some way,
right,
that I then allow for a high level of don't care. Right?
Yeah.
Which is childish.
Yeah, no, I understand.
But it's real. And so if I have a high level of don't care, then I'm liable to actually do things to indicate that I don't care. Or I will stuff aside what's good and right, and say, you know what, forget it. So those are the times when, I mean, let's make something light of it a little bit, but those are the times when I'm going to eat junk food or something.
Right. Yeah.
It's not right for me, it's not good for me, and it's definitely not something I would normally do.
Right.
But I don't care.
Right, I just don't care.
Because I blew it already, and so what? So what? Right? Doesn't matter. But the reality is, every decision at that moment still does matter.
Right. And
it's God's grace that wants to pull us out of that. And I think this is part of the childish, worldly mindset is that if I am being rebuked about something, then I'm in trouble, and then I can't be clean, and so it doesn't matter, and who cares, and all that. And I stay in that funky ashen place where I dump ashes on my head and all that stuff. And God is saying, no, get up. There might be consequences for whatever sin, but the reality is I still love you, and I still want you to come to me.
Right.
And so that kind of stuff.
Right.
So yeah, I struggle with that pattern over and over of some kind of failure, then some kind of rejection of God's grace, because that's what it is.
It is. Yeah.
Then some kind of justification for why I did that.
Why I did it. Yep.
And then it's a rabbit hole, right?
Yep.
And we talked a few weeks ago when we were doing this about how Satan talks to both ends of this.
Right.
Right? So the enemy says, it doesn't matter, whatever.
Just do it.
Yeah, and then you do something that you know is
How
wrong.
How dare you?
Yeah, exactly, on the backside. So this is where we have to kind of mature a little bit and let God deal with us and deal with our hearts. Because no one's free from sin and all fall short. Right. But what you do after you fall short is so important. Right. It's so important. Anyway.
So important. Yeah. I just want to jump in with one last little thought as you were talking. Oh boy, if I even remember it. Oh man. The train's derailed. Maybe means we're just supposed to end right now. No, I'm thinking about doggone it. It was a really good point. Sorry guys.
It'll come back to you.
It will come back to me after the podcast.
And you'll jot it down. We'll start with that next time.
Maybe. Anywho, I'm sitting here trying to buy time so I think about it. Thanks for listening. We are, again, checking out Romans 6, 1 through 11 today. We've got some questions for you guys to just kind of look over in your small groups. Hope this is beneficial. I think the ending that BK set us with a long time ago is cheers.
Cheers.